8:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour. We are live. I'm getting everything kind of organized here. We're live on YouTube using the GunTube chamber, and I feel like I'm getting an echo from someplace. We're kind of playing with some tech here since the YouTube kind of kicked us off the Hangouts back in September, and then the free service I've been using, the Streamer, has run me out of free time. I'm back to using the direct connection to YouTube with XSplit. So it's a little behind the scenes, but basically saying thanks for sticking with us through the technicalities here. And we got a bunch of people joining us on the guntube.org chamber tonight. We got Angelina jumping in from California. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for inviting me to the chamber.
Right on. And then we got Devin jumping in. Where are you at? You're not in Virginia, are you?
Virginia.
Oh, you are in Virginia. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping in.
Virginia.
And I don't know if this is the first time you're jumping in Daily Gun Show or not. It might be.
Yes, it is.
Right on. And we got Cycle right near you there in Connecticut. Thanks again for jumping in tonight.
Hi, everybody.
So I sent the links out. Thanks, Cycle. So I sent the links out to something like 35 people tonight, and there we go. Got a little bit less distracted now that I've got my virtual account situated here. I sent the link out to 35 something people. We'll see who all jumps in. The guntube.org chamber can facilitate all 30 of us, so 30 plus. So we could have all kinds of conversations over here. So going into 2020, I'm sure people have been looking back. We kind of looked back yesterday, but I sent out the emails today and suggested let's talk about two things. What we can do for Every Second Matters, since that's tomorrow technically, and going into the next decade. Every Second Matters is 7 years old, right? And it evolves, it changes all the time. So what are we going to do with it going forward? And I want to look at a decade and not just the next year. And I want to look at next year as a step in the, all the way to the next decade. But then what do we do for 2A? What's the gun community going to do in for the next decade? And I don't know if we don't need to go around. This is first day of the year, first podcast. This is a conversation with the people out there watching. The way we're streaming this now with the XSplit, you see the GunTube chamber over here and everybody in it who jumps in, and you see the comments. So everyone's part of this conversation. So just kind of throwing it out there. Let's go with Every Second Matters first. Any ideas where we take Every Second Matters?
I'd like to see more organized efforts, like letter writings or rallies or anything really. Just more more like, hey, this Every Second Matters, we're doing this.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Like coordinated with the second, in other words. So like this second, we're going to do this, or maybe on the second, here's some things to do, and not just what did you do, but here's a list of stuff you could do.
Yeah, obviously not tomorrow because it's short notice, but, maybe on the second everybody calls, the governor's office in Virginia and says, hey, this isn't cool. Or, stuff like that we as a community all do together. And, because there's not a lot of unification coming together and efforts widely spread. And that's kind of like one thing, one day you can start doing. It's a step anyway.
I kind of like that. It's actually an evolution of the whole thing anyway. And with rally, right, the 2A rally, which was a result of the frustration with the NRA and the lack of awareness or apathy to the situation at the NRA, and the idea that if they put out a catalyst, a way for people to get together that wasn't under the banner, right, of some three-letter organization or under the coordination of any entity, but instead was just an exercise in rally, getting together and all that. Then they had the online version of it. This could be a continuation of that concept of like an online rally on a regular basis. Roosted saying,
Yeah, I think
right,
that would
people.
be, I think it would be positive, like, just as a whole for everyone to do and to, like, I know there's the whole, like, what did you do for every second matters, but it's like, hey, this is what we're doing today. Like, on Wednesdays we wear pink. On the second we do gun activism.
Yeah, I dig it. Would you say that there is on the second now?
Wait, what?
Would you say there was now on the second? Big whoop-de-doo?
Oh, like, what did you know how we talk about, like, what did you do for every
I
second
thought you
matters?
said,
Went
I
to
thought
the
you said there's
show.
the big whoop-de-doo with every second matters. I'm like, oh, I didn't know we had a big whoop-de-doo. Okay, I'm trying to figure out, like the big party
No,
or
there's
something.
no big one yet, but eventually there could be.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, basically that's what it's come down to lately, and if anything, is so what did you do? Yeah, and if nobody did nothing, then it's a real quick conversation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would just take somebody to kind of organize it, and I don't know, someone's got to step up to the plate and be like, for February 2nd, we're all going to do this.
I agree. More hand, like she said, a all hands on deck approach, I think is definitely going to be needed for 2020. Because, I mean, we're seeing the press by the anti-gun side on every level, and it's not going to stop. So we are the gun lobby, literally. So we're the ones that are going to we're the call to action. Like, we don't have any big name entity to rely on anymore, or falsely rely on. Like, it's time for everybody to really get down and get to the business.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I personally feel that one of the reasons why we continually lose rates is because everybody thinks somebody else is going to do it for them. Like, somebody else is going to show up to vote, or somebody else is going to call their representatives.
Right.
So they don't do it. And, we all have busy lives and shit, and, like, life is life. But, on the second, you got a little job to do, and you got a task to do. And if you love your rights and you love guns, you'll take 10 minutes out of your day once a month on a Tuesday and do whatever little task is dreamed up.
I like it. And then one of the other things that we've had, because it's 7 years now, there's all kinds of, ways that it's been approached or been ignored or been rallied behind over those times, all dependent on what's been going on. But I like the idea of having a specific set of things. Again, they're not requirements or anything, but if that's, something that people could rally behind, because then that gives somebody who's wants to make a video, wants to talk about every second matters, maybe a couple of days out or a week out or in the middle of the month, just to, create awareness when it's not right up imminent, like you're saying, like tomorrow is kind of tough. Yeah, that would give people another reason to talk about it. Like, hey, on Every Second Matters, this is what we do. Not because right now it is actually pretty difficult to describe what is Every Second Matters. Well, because it's nothing. It isn't. It's just the concept of understanding that activism is something that requires eternal vigilance, and the Every Second Matters project is just to remind us each month. And it's a what's the word, like something that we task ourselves with. It's not an obligation. And it's not like a responsibility. It's just one of those things like, oh yeah, I remember that that's there. And if I choose to participate, I can. So that's been pretty hands off. And we've gotten exactly what you'd expect, not much participation. So actually giving somebody some actual task that might involve more people. And again, just because you give them something to actually do instead of just say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about my Second Amendment. They put that into their schedule, in other words. And now there's something to talk about when we meet up on that day.
Yeah, and the whole video making thing, I mean, it could be talked about for a whole month. Like, okay, we just did this activity this month, and for the next month, we're all rallying behind this. And so, all month everyone's getting pumped up about it, spreading awareness, telling their friends. And then, boom, on that day, whoever it is gets messages or there's phone calls or whatever. And, you're going to notice an influx of people, calling and blowing up your phone.
Yeah, ideally. And that's how you get more people on board, right? When you start something, an effort, and then there's some participation, then it's easy to get participation. Once it's established and once there's some success, people are going to come by and, oh yeah, me too, right?
Yeah, and it's something to talk about and tell your friends about. And it's easy. It's not, you're not giving anyone money. You're not going out and doing manual labor. You're just saying, hey, here's a link. Download this, letter and send it here to this email, or call this number and leave a message, or something.
One of the, I guess this is more so to the, what can we do as a whole in the 2A community? One of the biggest things or gaps that I feel like we need to fill is the attraction of younger influencers and activists and advocates. Honestly, because I feel like the anti-gunners have got the science down to a T on how to use and militarize kids for themselves in a very dishonest and disingenuous way. But if we were able to somehow figure out a way to engage these kids, from personal experience, I've seen how they can be open-minded to a different perspective, because a lot of their dealings with like anti-gun propaganda is really the only influence that they have, and they're not, they're just not exposed to another perspective. And when we can create liaisons and connect with these kids in some way and get them to understand why, defending your rights and defending yourself is vital in life, I feel like, it makes our job easier, because we're attracting the next generation into what we all love. And obviously we're going to pass down this tradition and all these customs down to our kids, but I feel like we need to do a better job of engaging younger people.
Right on. I think we got that's an awesome point. So we got a good mix tonight, because we got Angelina and you who are like young, and I got me and Cycle who are super old. So here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this since I think Yankees chat earlier today.
First of all, age is just a number, because
no, I know, but I'm talking generationally. You got a different perspective on stuff. I'm just.
But if I had the energy that you have to do what you do, oh my God.
Well, that's just Starbucks triple shot energy, chocolate milk drinks or whatever they are that I've been drinking at the dollar store. But no. But seriously, the what I've been thinking about since Yankees chat earlier is this. I think it was Yankees. So one of the chats earlier today, somebody was talking about something, and it got me thinking about the other side. And we got Bloomberg, who's at some age, and he's about to put his hat in the ring as the 14th, I think, wealthiest person on the planet for president of the United States. So that's going to be a challenge. And obviously guns, for some reason, he's into guns, and I think he wants that to be his legacy or something. So we've got this older white guy who's beyond that 14th wealthiest person on the planet. Like it's just I can't imagine when they start looking at a magnifying glass of this guy, what they're going to discover to get him to be the 14th wealthiest guy, right? So we got this really interesting situation happening, but we've got everybody else on the anti-gun, on the gun prohibitionist side, is about to keel over just because they're super old. And the new breed, or whatever you want to call, of like what's the word, like for the non-conservative, like I don't know if they call themselves liberal anymore, but like the progressive, where they have like they're interested in economy and in and other things, and guns are part of it, but they're not passionate with guns like the super old Pelosi and Feinstein and Bloomberg. And these people only have a finite, even if they can pay for the best healthcare in the world, they've only got a finite amount of time left. So I think that's one aspect. And I'm not wishing anybody any ill will. I'm just saying facts of life. The other side is basically run by really old people. Now they're super wealthy and they've got influence and stuff, but for whatever reason, the reasons they want to get rid of guns are not being passed down passionately, I don't think, on the other side. It's just one of the issues they've been given. And like you just said, I believe that once you give them the facts, any person who's thinking rationally doesn't need to love guns, but they don't need to rabidly hate them either. So I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt who are the younger progressives that they're only doing it because it's been in front of them and they haven't been given an option. So with that said, I'm going to go back to our side, the pro rights, right? Our side. What we've got is the same situation. Most of the people running the organizations are fairly old. Now, we're not in as bad a shape because we're not run by one rich guy with one old lady from Monsanto running one organization that trickles money down to all the other organizations under lockstep. We've got like FPC, those guys are relatively young, but then we've got Second Amendment and Gun Owners America, fairly old. I guess they're handing the baton on gun owners, so it's going to stay healthy. But I guess
I'll say Gun Owners of America, they have some young staff in there.
They passed the baton. You're right. It's not like one guy, because he's not going to stick around and hold it down to the end. So that's true. But
Yeah,
I'm just saying we don't.
Like I've spoken to Eric from GOA a lot.
But he's not young. But he's not young.
Old.
Yeah, I hear you, but he's not technically all that. All I'm getting at is on our side, we got a similar situation where we got an aging version. But what do we got on this side? We got a whole bunch of young, relatively young people involved and ready to take that baton. But now that's just focusing on the gun prohibitionists and our side, right? Now let's just go to like the whole population in general. You got my parents, the baby boomers, are at like 20% influence on this federal election, from what I understand, and they're about to hand the baton to what would be like my children's generation, the Gen Ys, where they're about to have 20% or so of the influence. And then going forward, old people have much less, and the young people just take it from us because you people, young people, are bigger than my bubble. So it doesn't matter what happens, the baton's going to be handed off away from our influence. We only get 10% of the influence ever, so we're just going to casually watch all this stuff happen. So what I'm getting at is, I believe what you're saying is we need to get more young gun people and gun activists, but that's going to happen, period, because the old people are going to not be there, and all that's going to be left is the young. But I think we're in good shape, because I think, honestly, we are in a better, more whatever, we're in a better spot than the other side. The other side is being run by directive and paycheck, where our side is being run by an ever awakening awareness of a right that is being denied. And I want to get your guys' take on that, because Cycle always gives me good insight if I'm crazy, and you two are too young, or so young that you can give me insight from what it's like to be a whippersnapper.
No, I think there's definitely validity to that. The only thing that I would say is that I feel like the internet and social media is where a lot of the ignorant anti-gun people are, and that's where a lot of the influence is coming from. But you do have a point, because at the same time, I have seen organizations like TPUSA, Young Americans Foundation, and organizations like that across college campuses. It looks like, and it seems like, they're positioning their younger kids into a better position to run for office, to be honest. It looks like this is going to be the next generation of, like, the conservative party. And I have my problems with them, but overall, it might be a good situation, because you don't see that on the other side. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers what you were saying directly, but I think what you're saying is correct.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if that perspective is valid. I mean, I don't know what the numbers of, like, how many.
Is it on a mainstream scale? how is the gun industry looked at from an outside perspective? Like, are we still only viewed as, the typical bud old white guys that are preppers and, and are just looking to hunt and start the next revolution? Or are we really starting to look more like America? Because I feel like once we start embracing the fact that the gun industry isn't what that old stereotype is, and really push that to the front, I feel like we'll be more accepted. But I feel like our perception is still, kind of messed up from other people.
Well, in the eyes of everybody else, you're a completely horrible person if you're a gun owner. If you're like a true leftist. I just had this conversation the other day where basically the world we're in now is super black and white. So, so me, myself, I'll speak for myself. I voted for Democrats before. So if I like most of what you have to say, and I think that, you could probably bring something good to humanity, I'll vote for you. I'll cross party lines, no problem. But these days, if you have a D next to your name or an R, you're either a shitbag or a saint. And there's no in between. And that's kind of, that's the culture that we're breeding today. And like the thing that you said about social media, I think was super accurate, because it's the youngins, or, I'm almost mid-30s, so it's these people that are on Facebook, and they're the ones that are fucking sharing their opinion the loudest and sharing, fake news and weird facts and all kinds of misinformation. And it's, everyone thinks that their opinion needs to be heard by everybody.
And even when they retract the misinformation, it's already still out there, and you can see the numbers that the video or whatever article is already done. Like, the damage is already done. You've already put this out, and people aren't going to look for your second article. So,
oh, absolutely, dude. You
and honestly delivering, and it's frustrating.
Oh yeah, and people think anything that you read on the internet is true, or this article looks pretty valid, or this headline, which is all that I read, says this or that, so that's what I'm going to go with.
I'm going to try to play host, give Cycle, you're still awake, a chance to chime in if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to...
Let's talk a little bit about young people. So let's talk about or let me give an example of where I think we're having such a hard time, because like TW said earlier, I'm probably one of the last generations where we used to bring guns to school in the backs of our cars, and we used to go hunting right after school, and we had shooting clubs in school and stuff like that. But think about what happens today if a young kid mouths the leftist progressive propaganda on Facebook, YouTube, whatever. He is lauded and told he's a wonderful person. If a kid puts up a shooting video of him at the range, he gets suspended from school. How do you fight against that? Right? How do the kids get to say, guns can't be normal? I used the guns, and my mom was with me, or my dad was with me at the range, and I still got suspended.
But that's...
Because I happened to put up a video of it on Facebook or YouTube.
Okay, so my answer, and I don't know if this is appropriate, if I'm cutting you off, let me know, because I do this all the time, but how to jump in. I see it as on a cycle, right? You got the 50s, you got the 60s, you got the 70s, you got the 80s, right? You get this cycle of conservative to craziness, soft times, hard people, all that kind of business. So I see it as you get this ridiculousness, and it becomes absurd, and that's where this next generation, who I see has taken the baton in the election, is going to say, All right, this is draconian, and let's not be ridiculous. Like you just said, we understand what hunters and CCW is. We all know single moms. We understand the concept. And I think that, how do you also, so that's one aspect that I think we're going to just see the natural tendency of people to see through the BS, the veil come off because of the way we can disseminate information now. But I also think that through education, and what I'm passionate about is getting people to pick up a camera, a phone, and participate in these conversations so that our different versions, flavors, abilities to get information across comes out. Because something like I'm trying to look at now, a guy on Instagram who I really like his channel, had posted something that talked about some statistics from Mexico, because some stuff recently came out about the number of murders in Mexico. And just because of the holidays and stuff, I don't think it's totally appropriate, so I haven't posted it yet. But I think by in sophisticated or clever ways illustrating the juxtaposition of the massive violence that happens an hour south of where I live right now, right? The massive violence that happens right there, and we're completely blinded to it. I think by illustrating that in efficient, like savvy, like good ways, we're going to get that across to the generation that is going to pick up the baton, and they're either going to be understand the bullshit, they're going to see through the veil, or I think even better, we'll win them over to our side that, hey, the reason we don't have that here, the reason we don't have cartels bullying whole areas of the country and taking over the police is because behind every blade of grass, I don't have to get into all that, right? What do you think of that? Am I crazy?
No. Give me 1 second. I wanted to read a tweet that my friend posted earlier, and I loved it. It was basically saying that, this is the generation that the overreacting snowflake BS burst. Like, that bubble's done. And I think that is true, because at the base of both arguments, right? Everybody is saying the same thing. We are tired of being controlled by, quote unquote, big brother, by the government, so to speak, right? And we're seeing these uprisings everywhere in the world, from France to North Korea to Hong Kong, like you name it, there's uprisings everywhere. I think the most recent one is India now. And even though the left is misinformed, I feel like if we can reach them, we can redirect their passion to the right fight and meet them somewhere in the middle.
Right on.
And I feel like if they just understood, like, yo, if y'all don't understand that the fight that you're trying to put on, you won't need a gun for, you're tripping. Like, what revolution have you heard of that was started by young people or by oppressed people that didn't involve guns? That was successful, at least. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where I always try to meet, more liberal, left-leaning black people. Is like, I hit them with history. It's like, so what happened with, like, the Civil War and, Deacons of Defense and the people that were defending their towns after, Jim Crow was enforced and the KKK was running around. And then once you hit them with that liaison, they're like, okay, well, I understand that. And then that's where I really start kicking it back. But I feel like the 2A community, when we engage the other side, we run straight to facts so fast, and
we're not
look
good
over some of the feelings that these people are still wrapped up in from the trauma that they're feeling. And we kind of have to draw back sometimes and meet people where they are.
That's a skill set we have to.
That's like my whole thing, is just meeting people where they are and then trying to get the point across.
No, that's valid too. Totally relevant. That's something that a skill set that we don't have, but we haven't even been focused on the fact that we don't have it until really recently. And even more recently, we've got, again, a couple of organizations out there that are more than just regional, even, that are attempting to address some of that. And by them bringing their voice, you look at, like, the speeches from gun rights policy, for example, as an indication of a finger on the pulse of how our activists are. Like, our activists are aware and are efforting to open that conversations, those types of conversations, I should say. And that's a step that, like I say, 10 years ago wasn't even some people might have acknowledged there's a lack of it, but no one would even know that we were a community, let alone a community lacking any elements.
Right.
I'm going to take it back to cycle. I know I interrupted you, Honda. I don't know if you were listening to all that, if you want to jump in with any of this, but we were kind of talking about, you're kind of in the middle. I'm looking at this, kind of neat. One of the things, I'm going to flip over to the one you can see. One of the things that they have here is speaker stats, and I'm only at 18 minutes, so I'm going to shut up and let y'all talk so that it doesn't become my chat. I really want this to be a discussion, so I can keep shutting up.
Well, there was one thing that you said there about needing guns usually for an uprising, and there's a couple of not uprising, that's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. But there's a couple of examples, I think, historically that need to be talked about, and that's the examples of Gandhi and of Martin Luther King, who both got their movements pushed forward without the use of any kind of violence. In fact, the advocation specifically not for the use of violence. So I think that's a point too. And
well, Martin Luther King, I'll say this: Martin Luther King said that, he didn't practice it, because the history of Martin Luther King, his side man, his right-hand man, his name is Stokely Carmichael. He's personally one of my favorite civil rights activists. He created the term Black Power, but he was basically Martin Luther King's shooter. Like, if anything was to, and he wasn't with Martin Luther King when he got shot, too. Fun fact. But there's a book, I forgot the name, but it describes Martin Luther King's house as like armory, basically. He knew what he had to do if he needed to. That's why he applied for a concealed carry license and got denied. I think it was like a couple months before he actually got killed.
But I think one of the reasons his message was effective and could reach people is, I think it was, like you say, implied or known, I guess, peaceful until, right? Peaceful unless, but peaceful first, and he never needed to really do like the Malcolm X or anybody else's more whatever, like that would not reach people that couldn't handle that, right? So the peaceful and then the implied until was there, I think. I don't know, I wasn't alive, but I'm guessing just from all this that I've seen since then.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a difference between like advocating violence for the furtherance of your cause versus advocating the selected use of violence for the defense of your life. You know, like there's a huge difference between those.
Perfect, exactly.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, there was a lot of divide on Martin Luther King's movement as a whole. But
well, they were facing a lot of like pressure and negative things against them, and like I don't know how much of this I have correct or whatever, and forgive me if I have any facts or dates or whatever wrong, but like there were like busloads of people in the South who got like misdirected, and like people who got murdered and stuff and lynched because they were on their way to like the Million Man March or this or that they were doing back then. You know, and like that stuff doesn't happen for the most part today, hopefully. Like, cross your fingers, fucking stupid fucking people out there. I get it, sorry to cuss. But there are that stuff does happen, but it's not to the frequency that it used to.
Oh, so now you just get hit with bike locks by little fairy boys with all black on, and it's acceptable.
Yeah, and that's where it is now. And like I think that's where you got to look at what is accepted, what is the socially accepted violence that's happening right now. And it used to be like the KKK or the like Southern poverty, I don't know what they were doing, like movement back then, you know, like all that stuff. But now it's like you're saying, it's people with bike locks and masks who are anti-Trump or anti-fascist while acting fascist at the same time. It's like
they're anti-human in general.
All right, well, hold on.
That's what I call them. They're anti-human. They don't want you to be a natural human. Everybody has something wrong with them, and we have to acknowledge it as somebody being oppressed.
Let me play host here. So I just want to keep it towards the next decade of 2A, ideally. But since I got both you guys in here, let me put this out to you, because I just got done with another 12,000 miles this year, which I did not intend to do. Drive into DC, put another bunch of miles on the tour, right? But altogether, the tour's up to like 60,000 miles. And I'm not suggesting nothing. I mean, truck drivers do that in a weekend or something. There's people that live on the road. There's traveling salesmen. There's all kinds of people that do stuff more on the road than I do. But I'm not just in Tucson. I drive around a little bit. And what I didn't see when I drive around places is curfews roadblocks, military convoys, repositioning of troops or soldiers. I didn't see areas where you can't go. I didn't see neighborhoods that are, wink, wink, don't go there. I haven't seen anything on a Google map that said civil unrest. I think I see occasionally things that happen in a country with 360 million people. And I see the media, who's desperate to have attention or influence, focus on the extremities and the low-hanging fruit or the extremes. But what do you guys, I understand what you're saying. And I what the hell? I'm just going to say you can't say that I don't know the same way I'm saying you can't know the future. But how do you react to the idea that we live in a place where we can say what we want? I mean, there's things that are in place so that people don't off themselves in front of each other. And we can take that as an affront to our rights, or we can understand that on a platform that has to delete 1 million users every single day due to spam and just general abuse, they have to do policies that are going to have a bigger footprint than they intend sometimes. So we can either look at everything that happens to us as an intentional affront, or we can understand that we live in a pretty dang peaceful place next to a pretty violent place, next to another place up north that, are they even awake? They're like in the 30s, right? Like, we live in this interesting place where we've created a whole bunch of the world the way it is today. We've affected change and made the world a better place, I think. And we've got a couple of people that want to yell at us and tell us that we're doomed. And we got plenty of people that'll tell us the next generation is either too weak or stupid or ignorant or lazy or whatever. I don't agree with none of that, because they're our descendants, and they're getting educated by you every time you watch TV and say, I don't believe what that guy just said. And every time you say, let's turn this off and go outside, or let's turn this off and watch it online and see what the real answer is. They're learning from that, except they're better than us. So I see the future as being a bunch of kids that get skeptical, and we get a much better place. So anyway, what do you say to that idea that there's not roadblocks, there's not curfews, there's not like anything that we had in the 60s that you were kind of touching on there? And I'm not going to dismiss none of the horrible shit that's happened in this country. I'm not dismissing one fucking inch of it. In fact, I think that as Kevin, KD, right, who does awesome efforts and making people, 1921 is almost a household word with gun owners because of Kevin, right? Like, there's some awesome shit that can be done by us recognizing our horrible past. But then I also hear people say that we killed freaking many times more than the population of the earth when they describe the Indian Wars, right? So there's some outrageous stuff that gets said suggesting that we're horrible. When are we going to take the veil off on that side and realize that they're attempting to divide? We're not. Are we really that divided? Question mark. That's the real question out there for all that.
Yes. Sadly enough, yes. And we weren't until this new generation of technology and social media really bursted. But I feel like it's just a quick wave, like I said. But yeah, I feel like the ignorance and the arrogance mixed with the ignorance is why a lot of people are that divided. Like, I have friends that are in Baltimore that vent to me daily because they try to talk to people about guns and nobody wants to hear. Like, nobody wants to hear about protecting themselves in the city that just passed their previous record of like 390 plus homicides this year. Like, it's not even like racial. It's just a complete divide on groupthink versus objectivity.
Well, let's call it skateboarding, and let me put it this way, so that because I can't know. And New York Outcast said the same thing, that he hopes I'm right, but he doesn't see that in his area. And I don't live in those, and I don't even live in LA, so I can't even imagine what it's like with high population, let alone all the different parts of the country. Got a big country. But let's say it was skateboarding, and let's say that back in the 80s when skateboarding was a thing, my parents, if I wanted to skateboard, they'd either have to ask their friends at work. They might go to, like, I think that's about it. Maybe they'd go to like the parents at a scouts or something, or like a sports team or some other, kids activity. They'd ask one of the other parents they knew. Maybe they'd ask a doctor or some sort of sports person they knew if they thought about skateboarding. But I'm thinking back when skateboarding was fairly new, and a parent who's concerned, what could they get? What resources they possibly get? Very few, just because there wasn't the internet back then. You just You couldn't go to the library and look up something that was a brand new device at Toys R Us. So how did a parent make a decision, right? So nowadays, when a parent goes to make a decision about a skateboard, they can hear somebody on the street say skateboarding is great or skateboarding is horrible, and they can take that either with a grain of salt or in one ear out the other, however you want to say it. But then they can go to their internet and decide for themselves. So as much as I understand your frustration that if you can tell somebody till you're blue in the face, this is the way it is, and here's, like you said, kind of relying on facts, or let's say you have a real savvy way, like Maj, you have a really good way to get the information across. Even if that still doesn't stick, the fact that we can write it on the internet, either well or not, but it can be on the internet and it's not going anywhere, and more than one of us could write it on the internet, again, in different ways, hopefully, then that person, that mom who's wondering about skateboarding, she can go online and get that information. Where back in the olden days, that just wasn't a possibility. So I hear the frustration that on the street, you're not going to win anybody over. I don't know if that was ever a thing. But now we can continue our effort persistently and offer the knowledge. And if the people, when they're ready to seek it out, and if they seek it out, it's there to be sought, we can still win in the long run. Is that the way to say it? Like, I hear what you're saying is frustration immediately, but I just want to say stick with it. I've just seen too many things succeed in spite of people's ambition or without people's even realizing it because they put it there and it worked in the long run, if that's the way to say it.
Can I say that I do hear what you're saying. Like it feels like the more in a city you are, like the more close to like big populations of people, the more helpless it seems because the city setting and traffic and everyone's always impatient and polite and personal and nobody knows anybody. You just kind of have that feeling. And I feel like if you're in the countryside or like we're smaller town, that kind of thing, like you don't have that same concern like where you're at G-Webs. So there's that. But that being said, recently several people, because they know who I am or whatever, you know, like at work or from whatever contact, have come to me saying, hey, I want to get my first gun. I don't know where to start. What do I do? You know? And that's just like one the other day, like literally like not even a week ago this happened. And then like a couple of weeks ago and then like a month ago, a good buddy of mine came to me like, hey, I got to get a gun. So there is hope out there. And I think people sooner or later come to those same realizations, especially the same ones in the insane cities, you know, like people of good mind who are dealing with the worst of society, which is a lot of the time what you get when you're dealing with people. And it's not like the worst, like in, you know, end times or social unrest, but certainly you're not getting any help if you have a flat tire, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. And it rubs off and it rubs in. And the more you deal with it, the more you feel like it. When you see someone pulled over, you're like, well, whatever, I got to get home. You know, you kind of have that too. I don't know.
You know what? I'm gonna disagree with you on that. So I live in LA, and you know, it's like next to New York, probably the asshole capital. And before I lived in the San Fernando Valley specifically. Before I lived here, I lived in Ventura County, which is more of a upper middle class, you know, bedroom neighborhood type place. And I would say that here, if you know, have a flat tire, that people are more likely to help you here than somewhere like that. Like, all the time I see shit where, like, someone's trying to load their car, and so they'll go, let me give you your hand, or, you know, carrying something out of the store, hey, you know, you need any help with that? And, I don't know, you just don't expect it from a bigger city. But I think there are good people around, and
I'm not saying that there's not, but I was saying how I can see how you could have that perception though. But like
I could see how you could have that perception, but I think that a lot of the time you're like trained to have that kind of perception, like you just assume like these people are going to be fucking dicks to me for whatever reason, or everyone here's a fucking
right,
asshole.
That might be like one of those self-fulfilling prophecies where you like
Oh,
walk
yeah.
into the store and you're like, these guys are going to be dicks to me. So you're kind of short with them, so that they're kind of short with you. And then you're like, see, they were dicks to me, but you didn't.
Well,
really
could it be
ignore
a numbers thing? If you're going to meet 1 out of 100 people is going to have a negative, interaction. I might only meet 100 people in 2 months. Where if you're going to meet 300 people in a day, that means every single day you're having 3 negative things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that we're all more alike than we are different, and it's maybe some point we'll realize that. I think we were close to realizing that before in some aspects, and now things are pretty divided. But there's also a group of people that kick and scream the loudest, and that's who you'll
Yeah,
hear.
that's who they want you to focus
Oh, I just
on.
thought of something. Well, go ahead and finish if you had something to say.
No, I was just gonna say like that's what the media wants you to think because it gives them a bigger share of. They're all fighting for their dying piece of the share of media because things like this, the internet is killing them. Like we are literally killing the media right now, and they hate it. And they want to shut us down, and they want to shut things like this down, and like put the most sensational crap they can out there so they get more clicks so they don't die.
And the powers that be, I don't want to play Honda here, but I'm going to play Honda here. The powers that be that use the traditional media and the focused attention that it offered back in the day to to help with either sell yellow shoes instead of blue shoes or candidate 1 instead of 2. They don't like it when people are out talking and discussing things amongst themselves as much as when the only debate is whether to watch this channel or that channel on Thursday.
Yeah, and they can't compete with stuff like this either because it goes down to a level that they're not willing to. Like things are said in chats like this that could be, taken negatively or whatever, and blown up and used against, and snidely whiplash freaking tactics used against us.
So we're talking a decade into the future. Talking a decade into the future in 2A. Looking a decade past, and maybe more than a decade to whenever I was using that skateboard thing, to when there was before an internet, really. If you were told guns are bad, right, and you were like, had no challenge to that, you're like, okay, I guess guns are bad. It makes sense. You just made a good argument. Guns must be super bad. You don't like guns, so no skin off your nose, right? Guns are bad. And there's nothing to challenge it. Now, that's fine. And we've got a bunch of people who are in whatever elected positions, bureaucracy, where they're making their money based on this position. And what New York, I guess, was saying out there, you can't even talk to college kids in a group about guns here without risking your safety. And I think I understand what he means, like the mob mentality or whatever, where, it's cool to be against guns. So I'm going to show my friends or that girl that I like, that I hate guns so much that I'm going to shout this guy down or whatever. And then it turns into more of that, right? So that's all based on the idea that guns are bad and it's socially acceptable to hate guns or whatever. All of that came in a time when there was no really, what's the word, like alternative message. You either liked John Wayne or the war, or you loved children, right? Like that's kind of the message that was out there. So if that was offered to you, who's going to pick war over children, right? Like that makes sense that people would be in the positions they're in. Going forward, you get into this like fascist situation where if you bring up the idea that self-defense, competition, investments, the idea that guns are part of our culture and you get beat down about it and somebody sees that and they're like, wow, that's an amazing reaction, especially if the person who witnessed it understands, hunting or sport shooting or the non-violent, obsession with firearms or whatever, like then they're going to see that that's a crazy overreaction. I guess going back to what I was saying before, the cycles, right? Like we're at the peak of this cycle. So is it possible that going forward, we do see a peak at this craziness, this like black and white opinion about guns because there's now an added influence. There's something different in the equation, and that's that there's the internet. There's all of us and everybody who came before us and who come after us who create content that's valid and interesting and boring and exciting and interesting and stupid and whatever, but there's a ton of it. And anybody who's interested, more than just regurgitating what they're told, which I believe is a lot of people still, when they want to go make a decision, they can go, oh, guns aren't that bad. Guns are actually a big, giant thing. So again, they're going to make a decision. I don't need to be rabid like this. I can not. So is it possible that we see a decline, I guess, in this rabid hatred or this the societal outcasting of all firearms because there's this communication now, and it's not done in the dark, I guess, is my real long way of saying it.
Well, how much influence do you believe like presidential administrations have on the overall position of guns in America? Because I feel like if there's a liberal president next that's taking a hard stance against guns, then there's going to be more of that sheep groupthink of anti-gun propaganda. So honestly, I don't know. Like, if we can finally find a balance within politics, because right now I believe politics is dictating culture, and if the politics are still screaming anti-gun and Michael Bloomberg is all over YouTube, like, that's just what people are subconsciously, getting. So it's going to be there eventually. Like, I'm on YouTube a lot, and I see Michael Bloomberg commercials all the time, and it's way more than Trump commercials.
He's got a lot more money than Trump, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Why does Bloomberg seem to want to go after power so bad? Like, don't you have enough?
Legacy.
You got like
Legacy.
billions and billions of dollars, and you can do
When
whatever you want.
When
go
you're at
wherever
that
you
level,
want.
you're competing with Carnegie and all the names that are used to be rich people but are now solving problems or getting rid of diseases or creating the next tech. He wants to have legacy, right?
I guess.
I didn't realize that Armament put a $2 super chat in there. I've been watching on the whatever this thing is, the app inside of XSplit. So first, thanks for that. And then he put in there, Virginia's going to be a, what did he say, proving ground? I forget what he said, but he said something about Virginia. So, Devin, you're in Virginia. Cycle, you're near there. The rest of us are out. Yeah, the rest of us are out west. The next decade, do we see what happened in California, which spread to Washington and then Oregon? And now it's happening in New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and now we're seeing it in Virginia. So we see these like two, what we would call spreads of it. Like it happened and it was undercover. And I'm going to go to my same point that it happened while we were disorganized. These latest things are happening as we become more and more organized and we know more and more of each other, and more of us are in these conversations together. So is Virginia going to be, I don't know, I'm not going to make you say if it's the hair that breaks the camel's back or whatever it is, but is this the indication that they're going to push too far and it's going to get everybody going so that all that potential in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, well, I guess Illinois is on the other side, but all these states where we've got population but good gun laws, I guess, because I would say Arizona, but we're sitting on like 2 million people. We're not even as big as a city in some of your
I would
states.
tell people that they might flop there next.
Nah, it's because of the heat, and there's just literally nowhere to move here. But that's why we're so small. But I'm just saying there are some states that are good gun states that are still high population states or bigger than us. Do you guys see that, or do you guys think we're just going to keep getting pummeled all the time?
I think Virginia's a different case, but for optics, yeah, it is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think the way that Virginia responded with the sanctuary cities was very strategic, and it was smart how they jumped on it immediately and didn't wait around.
I love it because unlike Illinois that did it as a reaction, eventually kind of they were able to be shunned because no one shined light at it. it happened in Virginia so quickly and in an immediate response to Bloomberg, who's running for president. Like, he couldn't have picked a dumber thing to step on, right? It's like stepping on a rake, right in his face.
Right, right. And yeah, I think for optics, yeah. But the reason why Virginia went anti-gun and turned blue was because of the massive influence and immigration that comes here. We have an influx of illegals and people just flocking in for the tech jobs from different countries, and they all vote Democrat. Like, all of them vote Democrat.
Yeah, same with Colorado.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying not, I assumed it was people in the northern Virginia there by where the NRA building is, like, that were working in DC, but I didn't realize the element that they're international new to Virginia.
Dude, Lockheed Martin's right here, CACI is right here, AOL, which Verizon just bought their campus. They're right here.
Hey, nothing wrong with AOL. Let's remember AOL's
right here. They call where I'm at, Northern Virginia, the Silicon Valley of the East. Right, the Amazon, the cloud, it's being built like 10 minutes from my house.
Snap. Hey, I hear there's a bunch of silver linings in there. Go grab someone. They like put them out. Grab them.
Well, maybe that's why there's a parallel, because like what you're saying in California, you know, like everyone's leaving California. Not as many people are moving there. You know, like I'm not sure if it's the implant thing with like people from all over and like cultures clashing and traffic laws not being obeyed. Like, I don't know.
The fact that California has an app to report in the streets, that's bad enough. Like,
yeah, they got a pretty bad rate.
Well, okay, hold on. So, Night Strike said that Illinois half-assed the sanctuary counties. I don't know about that, dude. Illinois got constitutional carry in Illinois. Or not constitutional carry, I wish. They got concealed carry in Illinois, which is amazing. And then they did sanctuary counties in something like 107. Is Ozzy out there? I forget. But in a good percentage of their counties. That's something. Yeah. So they might not. And I didn't mean to suggest that what they did was not amazing, because it inspired.
Didn't they just change their CCW laws?
I don't know, but it inspired Virginia. So what Virginia did was better timing.
I'm pretty sure they changed it. Like, they upped the fee and they make you renew faster. So before, I think it was like $10 for like 5 years, and now it's like $150 for like 3 years.
Illinois, it was never that cheap, but yeah, they might have done that. I could see Illinois doing that. I don't know, but I just wanted to give Illinois a thing there. But
they've got the sanctuary counties in Colorado too for the red flag laws that took effect starting today. So that's great. I'm not in one of them, unfortunately. But we did that as a response to what's going on in Virginia, I think. Like, that was declared in Virginia. They talked about it in Virginia. They started doing it in Virginia, and we said here, like, screw it, we'll do it too. I mean, we were talking about it before, but it really gave a lot of the other counties courage to do it that didn't before, after Virginia stood up and did it. So that was good to see.
You know what else something is to watch out for is what's going on in, what is it, Austin? It's turning like extra blue in Texas. I think that's a situation where I don't think we should wait too much longer, because Texas is a spot where people will flock to and move to fast. And if too many, implants get there, it can really mess up things for gun owners. And we already hear the complaints about it now, so that's something out.
And I'm just going to keep playing devil's advocate, but this, again, the kind of stuff I want to start chatting more about in 2020. What about the concept? I hear what you're saying, and here's the thing. You can poke your finger in the crack of the dam or whatever they call it and hope that solves it, but you're still standing there with your finger there. So we have it definitely in Arizona. I think it's something like 50,000 people a week, or I forget. It's a lot of money. A lot of people come from California every week to Arizona, and it's changing Arizona. Instead of getting mad at the concept, the people are leaving California and they're coming here. It's sort of like, isn't that like the best opportunity we have to, it's like we can address them at a reasonable number as they come out. Like, maybe we should be focusing our efforts on the relocated, to address, you know, hey, you just moved. I bet you there's a reason why. Maybe you should open your mind to guns too. In effect, is it maybe we should not look at these things as like a hemorrhaging or like a negative, but like maybe this is our opportunity. We're getting Californians in Texas. We can say, hey, you're from California. Like, let's go shooting real quick. Let me show you why it's cool to be in Texas.
Right. Like, I'm just saying that's a situation where it shouldn't be ignored as like, oh, just because it's Texas, like, we don't have to worry about it. Texas loves their gun. Like you said, let's start engaging them faster, or just address what we know is going to be coming. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Be ready. Like, quit being frustrated by it and be prepared and use it to our advantage, maybe.
Right.
Because I don't know, that's where maybe some of the people in states can help us with. Again, one of the things that I've enjoyed most from gun rights policy and the, what do you want to call, like, presentations from them, is somebody that said go 51%. You have to go more than 50% to actually be having a conversation with somebody. Otherwise, you're just presenting your opinion. And maybe that's a way to get, you know, they are coming from California to Arizona or to Texas or from Delaware to, I don't know, whoever the people are, they're bringing their crazy gun prohibitionist ideas. I doubt very many of those people are like, I'm leaving that state because of guns, and I'm coming to a state that has more guns because I hate guns so much, right? They're probably like on the fence, if anything, about the guns issue. That's why they were willing to move to a state that's got better gun laws. You know, they moved in spite of it.
That is true. I never thought about that.
But that's sort of what Tony does. Tony was in Match Chat earlier, and he takes people, you know, in orientation and I can't think of the other word, but basically just shows them guns, and if they want to, they can introduction. He'll show them guns. He'll let them shoot them if they want, but if they're satisfied to just see the gun, they can walk away. Ask some questions, see a gun, see some gun owners, walk away. You know, maybe having more opportunities like that where we're not like, hey, you want to carry a gun to kill people or defend yourself? If that's how they hear it, like, hey, you just want to know what a gun's all about? Learn about it. You want to keep your kids safe? Here's a kid safety thing, like Faster Saves Lives does. Give people an introduction that isn't with an agenda. Just hey, you want to know about guns? Know about guns. If I want to know about bakery, I don't want to go to somebody who's going to teach me how to cook with licorice, right? Like, I'd never want to bake again.
Yeah, the surest way to make a gun owner is take someone shooting.
You know, hey, I want to learn about bakery. Okay, let's make a fruit cake. I didn't really want to learn about bakery after all, I guess. You know, like, think about what we're doing.
The surest way to make a gun owner is to have somebody get mugged.
Yeah.
That works too, or get robbed. That's how I became one.
I don't agree, but
Fucking, sorry, cussed again, but my apartment got broken into with a crowbar when I wasn't there, and left a rather uneasy feeling in my stomach that only a shotgun fulfilled. It's weird. Once I had that shotgun in my hand, that feeling went away.
all right, well, we kind of went all over. Let's blame Night Strike for that. He's out there taking us off on crazy tangents. How do I figure out with this system how long we've been live? That's the one of the things that I liked about the old streamer before they kicked me out. Are we been live for 1 hour?
An hour and 3 minutes.
Okay, that's pretty decent. So it's up to y'all. You're the people that are making this happen. Do you want to keep going, or is this enough for a first chat of the year?
I wanted to ask about the thing you didn't want to talk about in Mexico, if that's okay.
What do you mean?
Well, you were talking about, like, you didn't want to bring people down because it was the holidays, but the holidays are over. What was it?
Oh, no, I just meant whenever Ed posted that. I'm talking about Ed, whatever his name is, the dude who was a...
Calderon?
Yeah, thanks. Ed Calderon, who's what do they call him? Whatever, a police...
Special Forces.
I don't know if he was all that. He was a police officer in Mexico, though, for a long time. And now he's up here.
Joe Rogan?
He was on Joe
Yeah,
Rogan.
okay.
That's where I learned about him. But then I started watching his Instagram, and it's very, 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 very interesting Instagram. Really cool insight
I
into...
watched his Rogan interview a couple of times. I love that interview.
Seriously, right?
Oh,
And his Instagram is just that, except, you know, a little bit every day. So he posts all kinds of interesting stuff. One of them was something that's recent about numbers in Mexico. Now, the problem with numbers in Mexico of anything is that they've got influence to their government and every piece of their infrastructure because of their horrible cartel thing. And you can blame them all you want. And then we've got these drug laws that created it all because it's pretty much we're the number one customer. It's not like those cartels are rich because they're selling marijuana to Venezuela, right? So, there's these cartels down there that screw with stuff. So the numbers are always crazy. I know as somebody who lives in Tucson, and we have situations or whatever because we're here and I have to listen to people tell me what it's like, just the same way I'm sure y'all have to listen to people tell you what it's like in your states. So whenever I go to look for what the actual numbers are south of the border as far as crime or murders or anything, it's difficult because they just don't have a big infrastructure to give you actual numbers. Their press and stuff doesn't have the resources or the ability to give you those numbers. So whatever these numbers are, I'm just prefacing all with a grain of salt, right? Like whatever these numbers are, Ed put them on his Instagram. 50,000 deaths? No, it was 50,000. It was either 30,000 or 50 something. Maybe it was 38,000. I forget. I only looked at it once. But it was a comparable number to our gun violence down there, and that's just murders and stuff. So, in other words, our number with all the suicides, that many just murders. So when they want to suggest that our country is got an epidemic, they're ignoring 2/3 more murders. I mean, it's incredibly more murders, actually. I can't even imagine. Right over here with one of the largest land borders in the world. But anyway, that's what I was probably gonna just try to do some kind of post or something on Instagram. It's not like I was gonna cure cancer with it. I was just gonna not put that up between Christmas and New Year's or something.
What is the population of Mexico? Like,
That's a
how many
good
people live
question. I don't know.
129.2 million.
122,
Like
a third of us.
Yeah.
And they have more murders than we have all gun crime, period, or all gun deaths, period. Excuse me, I shouldn't say.
And it's like 84% of our gun deaths are suicides?
2/3, yeah.
2/3. So they're covering more homicides and murders than.
And that's the official number. It's like the official number. That's not like how many people are, taken out into the jungle by the cartels or in name of the car. I mean, who knows how many actual violence happens when you don't have a system that keeps track of it all, or that can keep track of it all. So that's just the numbers they present. So that's all I was going to try to do, just show that, because again, they're going to suggest to us we've got a gun epidemic by ignoring the world that we live in. And literally
and also
right next
saying,
door.
hey, the agency that's going to solve it is the same one who is arming the people who are actually having the worst gun epidemic in the world right now. Well, I don't know if it's in the world, but
Well, I mean, you can say
certainly
that. Whatever, right? I don't agree. But when you say that, you have to take that person to say, hey, let's get on a rope here and let's take this out let's go out on this branch. When I'd rather say, what's the difference between here and there? The 50 something or 30,000, whatever it was, murders, right? People the government know was murdered and they found them. Like, that's a heck of a lot of murders compared to here. The difference is that we don't have a cartel running around, and that's because there's an immediate lethal consequence for goofiness. If some cartel tried to come down my street here, I suspect they'd get more than one, no thank you from the neighborhood if they ran down the street saying we own this neighborhood. That just doesn't happen here, where it can happen in other countries. And that environment of peace, that environment that no criminal would even consider, I'm going to take over this part of town. That environment, that situation that we live here, that they say that we are an epidemic in, that's untrue, right? They're only hand-picking data. They're not showing the whole picture. Now, I know that there's gangs and stuff that have turf and shit, but I mean, we're not going to suggest that that's the same as cartels driving around with armored vehicles and just owning chunks of, basically own states down there. And they war with each other at massive level.
No, we're just dealing with the aftermath or the repercussions of those wars. Because we have the fentanyl crisis right now that's killing more people than anything else.
And that's an excellent point too. How much of all this gun stuff is a distraction from something like that? And is that a failure of medicine, or is that a failure of bureaucracy, or like, that isn't a bunch of cartels are making whatever the pills are. I don't even know the names of them all, but they're not making them.
Well, a lot of the counterfeit fentanyl is coming from China. So I've heard that that's another reason why Trump is going so hard at China, is because they keep sending all these fake drugs over here from Mexico, and
That's
it's
interesting.
really messing up America.
That's interesting because it's got to be easier to ship a whole bunch of pills than it is to ship anything else. Even, well, I guess even, I don't know, does a pill smell different than like meth, I guess, or coke?
Oh yeah, because you can pills are they're concentrated, so you can make them into whatever you want. You know what I mean? They can all look like Flintstone
Vitamins or something.
vitamins and be acid or some sort of hallucinogen.
But isn't it like less than 1% of all imports get checked?
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. That might be interesting. I never thought about like that if you're trying to bring marijuana across the Mexican border, with bales or whatever, that's a lot different than making a factory just kick out whatever it is, opium or pill of opium, and then ship it across in a bunch of paper towel containers or something, and then
Yeah.
ship them to Tennessee or whoever. I don't know. I don't like to look ahead with 2020 when there's like a billion potentials and try to assume we know what's actually happening. But we can certainly keep these conversations going. I mean, we're not trying to solve anything. We're just trying to be open-minded, right? And keep our tech savvy, keep not so much entertained, but keep the pipes open so that when there's something important, those who know where to, that there's conversations happening, know where to come be part of them.
I have a question, and this might be for another night, but how do we get gun people to get involved in other fields that aren't necessarily focused on having the conversation of, gun versus pro-gun versus anti-gun? Like, Mike Sedini, he's a pretty good example how he jumped into mental health completely, and other than when he's talking to the gun world, he's really just talking to people outside of the gun world and completely indulged in mental health, right? So in other aspects or other, let's say, domestic issues in our country, how do we get gun people to get into these other avenues so that, we start changing the perception from the inside out?
I got an answer, but I'm
let's say somebody gets into I don't even know, like I don't know, like physical health therapy, like people who are recovering from like traumatic accidents or something. They could be from the gun world, but they don't necessarily have to say it until it's discovered, and it'll be like, oh well, wow, this person loves guns, but they've also helped me recover from, I don't know, third-degree burns or something. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, I got an answer, but I'm gonna try to play good host and let everybody else jump in.
Stuff like that, you have to do it when it feels right. I don't know, because if you come off wrong, then you're, kind of a bad ambassador for people who you're trying to be an ambassador for.
Right. I feel like people can find their lanes though. Like, I don't know.
Well, back in the day, you'd have like an NRA pin on, maybe, right? Like, or American flag with an NRA logo or something subtle that somebody could understand. But I don't know if that's something we want to, or that is going to continue, or that with all the political taint to it, that works anymore. Because if you had an AR-15 pin on, is that kind of how you mean, like to give people an idea that you're, I don't know, or maybe like a poster, something that indicates.
That's a good reason to wear like a gun shirt, because then like if someone asks about it, then you have someone who's like at least interested.
But you're talking specifically like in the professional fields where you might be interacting with others to show that gun owners aren't just a bunch of.
Not even necessarily professional fields, just, I guess, other forms of advocacy and activism.
Well, at first
Like,
when you said that, I
where
was
can we
thinking,
also reach out to the way that like we're reaching out to mental health now? What other issue is there that we could also reach out to?
I got it. Fucking First Amendment on the internet. Like that's huge and parallel to exactly the same kind of things and battles that we're going to be fighting with the Second Amendment. Like the disinformation, the use of that very technology against us, like that kind of thing. I think that could be a huge ally.
Right. But if let's say there are anti-gun people, right? Anti-gun people already run our social media platforms.
right.
So it's like, I don't know. I feel like that would be a hard one.
Well,
It's
I come
like,
from
I would
AOL.
anyways, because we already have that under control.
I come from AOL. Back in '97, I started working at AOL, and that was kind of dial-up, and DSL broadband happened, and then I started doing this stuff in the early 2000s. So my answer is going to be us and people that do. And first off, I said the thing about AOL because I hear what with the frustration when what seem to be anti people or people that are willing to push around others based on their political opinions or ideas own the platforms. So deplatforming or learning that we're online, that we're using the internet, and that we're using, in this case, GunTube and YouTube to get our conversation out there, but that each of us have an email, for example, that each of us might have a website, probably have accounts on Instagram and YouTube and others. So we realize that we are having a conversation online and we're just using these tools. The tools become less important and ideally just, extra things that we're doing, but we keep our conversation alive outside of it. And that's one of the reasons I've been advocating, like I have throughout the years, to encourage people to add their 2 cents to the conversation so that as a bunch of individual points, we have more traction, we're stronger, we're not dependent on any single point or any large entity. We have multiple things. It's tougher to remove it. But also, there's that second angle. How do we get out to more people? And I thought you were going to ask just people that aren't into guns. How do we get them to be aware of guns? And that's what I was going to say. Again, the same answer. Individuals posting their stuff. Like Honda just posted a video about his putting together a computer with his friend. And that could appeal to a whole bunch of people who may have no opinion or no interest at all, have never even thought about a gun before, might not even live in this country. But now when they go check out Honda's other videos or something else gets recommended to them, they're like, huh. Now, they don't even have to watch that video. They just have to understand that Honda's a normal person. He's also into guns. That's going to register. That puts a little dip switch on their spreadsheet somewhere so that next time somebody tells them all gun owners are XYZ, they have to consciously go, except for Honda, I guess. And how many other times do they have to say, except for? And I think that's how we win. And I've seen us do that where a bunch of people just doing their thing and guns are part of it is how we get more people on board. And I don't know if that works exactly to answer your question, but
No, I think that's right. To add to that, I think reviewers using their skills in other areas could help as well. Because I have 2 friends. One, he just started doing reviews for like really intricate action figures. He puts them together, takes some cool photos of them, does a review, post them up, whatever. My other friend is doing reviews on CBD, everything, like any product with CBD from one company. But he also does gun stuff, and I think if we can start doing that more, I think that's good too, because it makes us
100%. Yep.
feel more approachable and makes us look like the normal people that we actually are.
Well, and one thing I would say is like when I was talking earlier about advocating with that other group of people being the people who were concerned about First Amendment rights on the internet, I think that in a lot of ways, I'm not talking about the administrators, I'm not talking about like the people who were making those rules. I'm talking about the people who realize that the rules that those people are making are unjust, and they're already halfway on board with us if they're like, libertarian at all. Like they kind of have like that First Amendment, like government shouldn't be infringing upon us when we're talking kind of spirit about them, then they might be easily swayed towards our side if they're not already on it. If that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I wasn't talking about the administrators, the people who were making the rules, like having them, be on our side or convincing them of anything, because I don't think that we're going to, or maybe there's some people on the inside who have their own sway, who are ideologically not disaligned with us. But that being said, I think it's pretty well recognized that the majority of them are ideologically against us. That's why we're having some of these current problems that we're having is because of that.
Am I crazy, or is it just being like playing devil's advocate? But if we had an anti whatever Facebook or opposite YouTube where they were super pro gun and they were like defensive second A 2A over everything, and they were petitioning hard to get rid of NFA, and they were just carrying us along. So instead of being a struggle uphill where we're constantly getting pushed back and we are trying to make headway, in the storm or whatever, instead it was an escalator where we could just kick back. Would that, I see that as being potentially detrimental, because if that ever changes, then we're worthless. We have no skills. We have no ambition. We have no idea how we got to where we were. We don't appreciate how we got there. We don't know how we got there. We're effectively, the domesticated critter dropped back into the wild. The way that we're doing it now, it might be frustrating and not easy, but don't we come out being stronger and more able?
Yeah, the salmon that swims upstream, right? You don't want to be the salmon who swims with the current.
That's the fat, lazy salmon. That's a fat, lazy salmon that shoots 9mm because it settles.
Because you went in the ocean to get eaten instead of upstream and lay your eggs with the rest. Let your legacy live on.
Never let a child settle for 9mm. 45. Shoot.
Why not? It's the safest round to get shot with.
You only got 10 fingers. Metric must be good. I saw a thing, I saw a show today called something or another, like the history of the time in 2 hours. Anybody ever seen this? I don't know where it's from. It could have been from Discovery Channel.
About it.
Really cool. I talked about it on Match Chat a minute ago. It was pretty cool. Anyway.
Yeah, it's amazing. In 2 hours, you're talking 14 billion years, correct? Is the entire history of time?
Ish, yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And so humans have been around for like 250,000 years. If you like give it a good estimate, like a nice liberal, like here's a good estimate for you, 250,000 years.
This show counted the first time they wrote pictures on the wall of stuff to like kind of imply that they understand that there's like a year, like to imply the future or something. I think it was like that's when they, instead of just being a picture of a horse, like a picture of a herd of horses and how to hunt it. I forget, something like that. That's what they considered it being a human or whatever, counting from that point on as humans being the main critter.
Maybe 100,000 years then.
Well, no, it was the exact same time frame you said. It's just that was the indicator that particular show used, is like when the cave paintings turned into like signify something instead of almost be language instead of, or tell a story as opposed to just be there. Maybe they were indicating where the herd would be or something like that. Like once they were communicating through the cave paintings, that's when it was human. Super neat though, because it gets all into like.
I'm just saying, it's weird how there's that much history of humans that we don't know about. That's all.
I don't know.
Did anybody watch Graham Hancock's interviews?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I do
He is so interesting.
I do a conspiracy chat, and that's probably my favorite subject to talk about, and that was this second episode we covered that on it. But yeah, like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and Göbekli Tepe and end of the Younger Dryas period, and the melting of the ice caps and the Great Flood and the rising of the seas.
The erosion on the Sphinx.
Yeah, and potential Atlantis and all that stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
Back in the day, we'd listen to that on Art Bell or Laura Lee, and then there was no internet. So you'd listen to that, and then you'd try to write something down because there was no rewind either. If you were tape recording it, you could rewind it, but otherwise, you try to write something down if they'd mentioned a book or something, and then you'd have to go to like, because this was still pre Barnes and Noble and Amazon and stuff like that. So or what's it on Borders, whatever the bookstores are. So you'd have to like write down a book, go to a bookstore, ask them if they could order it. They would sometimes tell you, they'll call you or they'll tell you later because they'd have to go look through catalogs or call somebody. And then after a while, they'd tell you, nope, no idea what that book is. And then you'd have to go to the next bookstore and do the same thing, unless you're super crazy and went to every bookstore and asked them. And then the problem is if every bookstore could get it, now you had to tell some bookstores like, oh, I don't really want it. But whatever, it was a real pain in the ass back in the day when we'd listen to somebody like that.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, or even like.
But it was fascinating.
was in-
We'd hear that stuff and then go try to find the book and then chat about it basically the same way like this, except in real life. We never had an internet to chat like this.
Like even when I was in high school or before, like internet was a thing back then, but it wasn't like it is today by any means. So if you had to write you had to write like an essay, you had to go get the source material, which meant you had to go to the library and get like several books that you could steal several passages to quote from or whatever, which meant that you'd have to go to the Rolodex and find the area of the library that the book that might contain a paragraph that you might use for your book, for your essay might be, and like hunt down like 5 of them. Like, oh my god, it was such a pain in the butt.
And hope that nobody had them
after you
checked
do all
out.
of that, you have to cite it, like page and author and date.
And hope that nobody had it checked out. And if they had it checked out and never returned it, the library wouldn't know until you were looking for it and alerted them. And then they would start the process of trying to figure out where that book was. So you might not even see that book depending on how obscure the book was. Especially like I remember that happening to the few gun books that ever existed in a library. Some jerk would take it out, not return it. And they're not like, oh, let's jump and buy a new book right away, especially some book that nobody ever checks out. So yeah, it was ultimately frustrating. I remember going back
like,
3
like
times.
The teacher's like, hey, write an essay on this. So everyone goes to the library, and then it's like the fastest kid wins, because he gets the book that has the best stuff. And everyone else gets to like try to find something that maybe applies,
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep. Like let's do this book on like pottery, and it's like there's only 4 books on pottery, so the 7th person trying to do the report is waiting or going to another
I was
library.
always talking to somebody or doing something, or like I could have been quicker, but I just wasn't because I didn't care.
Oh, Woods is saying
And,
the teacher had no way to check the source. Well, we didn't know that. We didn't think at the time. If this is super complicated and almost impossible for us, it must be also impossible for them to check us. But none of us thought that far ahead yet.
No, we really didn't. We should have. It's genius.
You guys think there will ever be a reset in like technology? The
In
way
what way?
Greg Hancock and how he was talking about how primitive living civilizations were the ones that were able to survive during those like crazy natural disasters. Do you think that would ever happen again? Like we get so out of touch with nature that we push technology to the point of it just breaking all down again?
Oh, there's a movie, I think it's called like 3011 or 3022, and it's a bunch of people who are in I think a space station that is like halfway between here and somewhere else, maybe Mars or not Mars, that would be too short, but somewhere else. So they're kind of in this halfway point, and then I think the idea is that they live there for 10 years, and spaceships that are going to that far destination use it as a layover. So they are sort of like maintaining and helping out with people shuttling them to this other destination further away. And has anybody seen this movie?
No.
I don't want
This
to.
sounds very familiar. Did a girl like wake up before she got to where?
No, it's not that kind of movie. It's more like when at first I thought I was gonna not like it because it's more like one of these movies where even though it's sci-fi, it's all filmed in like one room and it's more of like a personal story, like how they get along with each other type of movie. It's not that kind of mystery. but or like science fi like that. You know, they went out there intentionally, and they just like 4 years into their 10-year thing, they just start to get a little stir crazy, and it turns into that kind of movie. But then, I guess I'm going to spoil it because it's like a 2011 movie. A thing happens, and they're like, "What the hell just happened?" And they don't know, and they can't talk to Earth anymore, and they're freaking out because they're four people in the middle of nowhere, and if they can't talk to Earth, all they can talk to is the other end. Well, eventually, one of the boats or ships or whatever that was coming from Earth got knocked out basically and meets up with them, and that's a whole nother set of problems because now instead of having four people, they've got more people and all this. So I won't spoil too much of it, but the glitch of it is that the last thing they hear from Earth is, "What have we done?" And sort of like some super collider or whatever created a black hole inside the planet. So yeah, your question is, can we screw up? I think we could potentially screw up pretty bad if we did something like create a black hole in a planet, but that's sci-fi. Can we really create a black hole in a planet? I don't know. I know 9mm can't.
Well, it's like go into a field and make me an iPhone. Like how long will it take you from whittling sticks to here's an iPhone? A really long time.
It takes 3 minutes out of the 14.
Everything got knocked out in like some sort of nuclear holocaust or whatever, and everyone crawled out of the bunkers in 10 years or whatever when the sun starts shining again, or however long it is, and all the technology's gone except for what you have. You can't produce more because they were all in factories that are blown up. So it's only a matter of time till the things that you rely on or the things that you still have are broken and gone. And maybe it would be like Cuba, with like all the Cuban cars that they still have running since the 50s. But But I mean, eventually that goes out.
It depends on
it
depends on if the knowledge, right? Like the ability, sure. If the factory's gone, then it takes us however long it takes us to rebuild the factory. But the understanding and the knowledge, and it's just a matter of rebuilding it. If that's there, then yeah. But if it's like a 6-year-old has a vague recollection that an iPhone used to exist, probably not, right? If the people that created the iPhone just have to rebuild the factory, you know what I mean? There's a difference.
Well, I'm saying, like, if you used an iPhone every day of your life, can you build one?
No, but the people but the people that invented the iPhone can certainly reinvent it, rebuild it, maybe better. It's just that if the factory's not there, it might take them 10 years to rebuild the factory first. But again, if it's everybody and just the 6-year-olds who barely saw an iPhone, they're never going to be able to just build one unless all the records of all the blueprints and all the other necessary knowledge is there. They're asking, is this really 1,000? Yeah, it's pretty much 1,000. I think I quit counting officially at about 850 because I was thinking that the gun rights policy conference, I was hoping it would be episode 900, but it was going to be like episode 970. So I quit counting because I was kind of taking a hiatus anyway. And whenever I started recounting, I just figured I'd start with 1,000 at the beginning of the year. So it's probably, it could be off by as much as 30, but it's only off by about 30 if it's off by any, because I don't really keep track anymore in the last couple of months how many shows I've done. But if we keep going forward, yeah, it'll start at 1,000. It's easy to get to a high number when you're doing them every single weeknight, because I get 300 shows a year, like 200 shows a year or something.
It's like a serial number on a gun. You lost track, so you just start over at 1,000.
Seriously, yeah. No, I highly recommend that show because a lot of the... Oh, you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to call it a night.
Hey, thanks for jumping in, Cycle. Appreciate it. Always welcome.
Take it easy, folks.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah, Bob gets a link pretty much every night. He's doing his thing. One time he corked us. So Night Strike was asking if Bob can jump in anytime he wants. I was talking about that show, though, that thing where they basically say if all of time is 14 years, human beings have been around for 3 minutes. So that gives you some idea of the scale. So a couple of ways to look at it. It was neat to hear it all, summarized, I guess you could say, in 2 hours, because they kind of say there's a Big Bang where allegedly every piece of energy in the entire universe comes out of nothing in no time, right? Like just happens. And then there's just energy, helium, I guess. And or it becomes helium in the first wave of energy accumulating, condensing or whatever. But helium alone, all it can do is gravitate into a big pile of helium, and then it creates a furnace, and then you get hydrogen or something like that. Yeah, I think it's helium hydrogen. Well, these giant hydrogen things can only supernova, and when they explode, they create other suns that are heavier materials, and that's where we get from the supernovas, like all the heavy metals and rock and everything else we've got. Everything besides the gas of helium and whatever. So all this is fucking happening in some kind of a soup. It's huge and somehow came out of nowhere. That's not Let There Be Light, right? Somehow that's not Let There Be Light. And then you get all this expanse, I guess, depending on how you look at it. And then you get the final like elements all conglomerate, and then the planets start to crust over. Once they start to accumulate, all the heavy metals go to the bottom. Our nickel and heavy metal core turns into a rotating sphere that gives us a magnetic field that gives us protection from the radiation. So all this stuff is like, how the hell are you going to know this? By looking out of a telescope? So there's like, oh, this happens between the 10 and 15 billion years or whatever, numbers they're coming up with. So is it possible that some planet did the exact same set of shit that we did, like 50 minutes ahead of us or a couple of weeks ahead of us? Or is it that they haven't done it yet? Or is it possible that it can't ever happen except for once? Like there's a lot of unknowns there. So Honda jumped out, but anyway, I think it was interesting because by the time it shows you all this, it kind of gives you a better idea of where you can shuffle in the idea of, I don't know, one of the things you guys kind of mentioned was whether we can handle an extinction level event. Well, this show kind of summarized the extinction level events, and it's possible for the dinosaurs to have had any of the stuff that Graham Hancock would suggest, all the like pre-clocks and the pre-calendars and the pre-tech that was all wiped out. Lizards, dinosaurs could have had all that stuff, especially if they just didn't die where we seen them, because they basically followed the same path as us, where they started going on two legs and not using their. As soon as we went from the trees to the grass, they say, is when we stood up to see over the grass, and then all of a sudden we're not using our hands to walk on, so we could fiddle with stuff and carry stuff, and nobody else was doing that. Like, no deer is walking around carrying anything because they don't have to. So we started carrying stuff, they say, as little monkeys that were carrying shit around. Dinosaurs were doing the same thing. As soon as they stood up to look over plants, they didn't use their front legs anymore, and that's why Angelina has tiny arms. So if dinosaurs decided to do something with their tiny arms, we just always draw them with tiny arms that are flailing around. Does that make any sense, that they would not do anything with their tiny arms? What if they had little thumbs and everything? We just don't know it. According to this show, which was on TV, so I'm assuming it's right, it says that a big asteroid hit the Earth, and that turned out the dinosaurs bigger than 50 pounds dead. And then just let them dead where they lay, and that's why we have all these dinosaurs wherever we got them, because they literally just died right there. Well, if you're the dinosaur with thumbs, you didn't die, right? You hung out in some cave or something. So I don't know if that's tinfoil or not, but anyway, I think it's a neat show to kind of just quickly show you like the whole summary of everything, kind of like thumbing through a history of the time book, photo book real quick.
And you said the history of time in 2 hours?
I wish I knew the topic. It's on my other computer. I watched it off of the internet, let's say, and I don't even know where it came from. I just figured out that my place that I like to watch movies lets you filter by like documentary, and like I had always typed in documentary and just dealt with the tons of stuff that they gave me. I typed in documentary and history, I think, and it went down to like 20. So it was like way more concentrated, interesting documentaries, and that's where I found it. So I wasn't really looking for it. I was just kind of browsing, and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And
so that little dinosaurs with thumbs thing that you just spelled out, that's basically the plot to Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Really?
Yeah, like all the other dinosaurs get wiped out by a meteor or whatever, but the smart dinosaurs that can build stuff survive. I forget if it was on the moon or like in a crater on the Earth or inside of it or something like that. But whatever it was, they survived till today, and they have like devolving guns that will devolve you into whatever you were. Like the bad guy was a T-Rex that was super evolved, and like they would like shoot it at the people, and they would turn into like chimpanzees and stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, that was Super Mario Brothers. You don't remember that? That was like one of the worst, cringiest 90s movies.
No.
Video game. Well, you weren't missing a whole lot, but that was the plot. They were trying to take
I
over.
barely
Oregon.
remember it was like one of those movies where people run around like a foam outfit, right? Like not quite special. It wasn't like it was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where they're running around like a foam suit, not any kind of CGI or anything yet.
Yeah, the Goombas certainly were like that. Like the main characters were just
People
with
or whatever.
costumes
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. But anyway, okay, so I think we've been going long enough. We're gonna start wrapping up. Devin, are you going to shot?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Right on. So I'm going to end it so we can chat a little bit off air. And so we've been running this on the tube. Guntube.org has a chamber, which is a place where we can have a live conversation like this. I guess we had 5 people in here before, or whatever. It can hold 30. So this is a daily conversation. Every weeknight we get together and have a conversation about guns. Want to get involved? Check it out, Daily Gun Show. And we've got Devin in from Trenchwork, got Angeline in from Allen Anchor. Honda jumped in from Colorado. You just represent Colorado. And Cycle Camp represents state of Connecticut. But if anybody wants to plug anything on the way out, feel free. Angelina, can I still buy
Game Frog
patches?
Chat again, if you haven't checked out the Game Frog Chat, check out my channel. We do a weekly conspiracy panel chat, and we cover different subjects. Talk for about an hour and a half, give or take, until we're done. And yeah, I don't know what we're doing this week, but check it out.
What night is it?
Sunday night, 9 p.m. That's East Coast Standard Time, 9 p.m. So wherever you're at, adjust accordingly.
I might tune into that.
It's
Yeah,
usually
check
pretty
it out
good.
if you
He
wanna
just
be on.
he just refuses to do actual conspiracy. He does old-fashioned conspiracies from the 1970s.
Hey, I want to talk about Operation Paperclip.
I had a good one. I can't remember it right now, but I had a good one from earlier today that I was like, oh dang, I should see if he'd chat about that. I'll try to remember when I'm not thinking about it. Angeline, are you still in here?
Yes.
Okay, I totally forgot what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you something. Oh, can I still order patches, or is that over for shot? I mean, I know you said the 30th.
I could probably make something happen, but you're running out of time.
Well, I know you said the 30th for real, so I figured I'd bug you on live so I could get special treatment. So anyway, anything going on? Any sales pre-shot?
I think that there's going to be like 10 new patches in January and February. So, yeah, lots of new designs and stuff. Also, a couple of new things coming. So, follow the Instagrams.
Right on. Well, thanks everybody for jumping in. Everyone's your guys. When I keep looking for your show on YouTube and I don't see it. So you do your podcast on that other platform, and then you push some of.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to stay away from YouTube so that I can build a platform where I don't get like censored. Because
Sure.
Blog Talk doesn't censor me at all, so I kind of just ride with them for now. But yeah, Friday nights, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah.
Now I need to then. I try to link to everything, so I need to like email me a link to like where somebody who's not logged into nothing, where they would. Is that possible? Can you listen live or like?
Yeah.
Okay.
That link for anybody who just listen to any of the old episodes or anything, it's on my Instagram in my bio. You just click it and go straight to the website.
Okay, so that's the link on your Instagram. It takes you to your podcast.
Yep, straight to
Okay.
the show.
Okay, cool. And then I linked to your YouTube before, and we'll link to the Instagram too. But again, thanks for jumping in. And yeah, I guess I've been sending it to your Trenchworks address. Give me your other address too, and that way, anytime you want, feel free to jump in. Like I say, we do these shows every weeknight. And then anyway, we've been doing this on the chamber where we have everybody joining in. Then we're broadcasting it out to the to YouTube with XSplit. So I'm going to shut that side off. Say thanks to everybody who showed up. It looks like Dr. No's out there from Texas, and Pink from Ohio. Night Strike, who's originally from Arizona, is out there, and then who built the tube. And then Travis and Woods, DM is out there, a bunch of people. And thanks for joining. Be part of these conversations. I guess Clover would say if you're listening to this in the future, use that comment thing wherever it is, hopefully over on Gunstreamer or Tube or someplace where this gets posted. And if you have any questions for the people on the panel tonight, we've listed links. Contact them or check them out. We're all on Instagram. Check them out except for Honda. Most of us are on Instagram. All right, I'm going to shut up. Thanks for watching.
Have a good night.
Shall not be infringed.